My daughter sold my body before I was even cold. And the last thing I did that night will leave you speechless. That sentence keeps echoing in my head, even now. Because when I opened my eyes in the hospital, I wasn't supposed to be alive. The first thing I heard wasn't a doctor. It was a nurse whispering, "I'm so sorry for your loss, sir." She said it gently, like she was comforting a ghost. I tried to sit up. My throat burned like sandpaper, tubes everywhere, my chest bandaged. "Who died?" I croaked. She looked confused. "You did." At first I thought it was morphine playing tricks. Then I saw the chart at the foot of my bed, black letters stamped and final. Deceased. John Whitaker. I laughed. It hurt. The kind of laugh that sounds more like choking. Then the nurse's face went pale. She ran out. 10 minutes later, a doctor came in, shaking. He didn't look at me like a patient. He looked at me like a mistake that shouldn't exist. "Mr. Whitaker," he said carefully, "there seems to have been a clerical error." An error. That's what they called my death. They told me I'd been pronounced dead after a car accident 3 weeks ago. No family claimed the body. Insurance processed the paperwork. Cremation scheduled, except I was right there breathing. I asked who signed the forms. The doctor hesitated. Then he said her name. Emily Hale, my daughter. The room went silent. Even the machines sounded like they were holding their breath. She'd been my only family since her mother died. My reason for everything. And now she was the one who signed me away. The hospital released me that night, half by fear, half by shame. They gave me a copy of the death certificate, my name, my birth date, cause of death, head trauma. But the signature at the bottom wasn't the coroner's. It was hers. When I stepped outside, the night felt wrong. Too still, too bright. Like the world had already moved on without me. I walked past the newspaper stand outside the hospital. The headline hit harder than any crash. Local woman turns father's tragedy into dream wedding. Below it, a photo of Emily, smiling, radiant, holding a bouquet. The caption read, "A daughter's love lives on." I tore it down, hands shaking. The paper crumpled like skin. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I borrowed a phone from a taxi driver, logged into my old email, flooded inbox, condolences, funeral notices, links to fundraising pages titled, "Help Emily Heal." Each one showed my picture. My face, pale, bandaged, stolen from hospital records. Underneath, all donations will go toward my father's final wishes and my wedding. People donated thousands, and the comments, they called her brave. They called her a hero. They said I'd be proud. Then I saw it, the post that broke me. A photo of her and her fiancé dressed in white, surrounded by roses. Her caption, "All for you, Dad." I stared at that photo for a long time. My hands stopped shaking. My heart didn't. That night, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, still wearing the hospital band on my wrist. Name, John Whitaker. Status, deceased. I whispered to my reflection, "You sold my body, Emily, but not my soul." Then I tore the band off and walked into the dark, because somewhere out there, my death was still being spent. On champagne, on dresses, on a wedding I'd paid for with my life. They sold my death for champagne, and my daughter once said she wanted a wedding that would make her mother proud. She forgot her mother's ghost was still watching. Before Emily Hale became a headline, she was just a little girl sitting on a greasy workbench, drawing hearts in motor oil while I fixed engines. She used to wait for me every evening, tiny hands covered in dust, and ask, Dad, when Mom comes back, can she see me in a white dress? I'd smile and say, she never really left, sweetheart. After her mother passed, it was just the two of us, a mechanic and his miracle. I worked 12-hour days at the shop, skipped dinners, saved every dollar I could. Every bruise on my hands bought her books. Every cut on my palms paid for another semester. Emily was smart, smarter than me. She said she'd never waste my sacrifices. She said her future would be the one thing that would make her mom proud, and me too. But love, it blinds you, doesn't it? Especially when it wears your daughter's face. When I had the accident, a snapped chain, a steel bar, the sound of something breaking that wasn't just bone, I thought that was the end. They said I was lucky to survive the first surgery. I didn't feel lucky. I felt finished. I remember her sitting beside me in the hospital, holding my hand like she used to as a kid. Her voice trembling, "Dad, don't worry about anything. I'll handle it." And for the first time in years, I believed her. They handed me papers. So many papers. I could barely lift my arm, so I just signed. Medical release, financial coverage, life insurance updates, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that one of those pages didn't just give her control, it gave her my death. Weeks later, the coma hit. Doctors said I wouldn't make it. And that's when she signed the final document, certificate of death, issued and approved. Emily told them she'd handle the funeral. She cremated an unclaimed body under my name. No one questioned it. She transferred everything I owned into her account. The house, the insurance payout, the savings, even my workshop. Sold. When I woke up, that life didn't exist anymore. The world had erased me, and my daughter was the one who clicked confirm. I found out what she did, the same way everyone else did, through a live stream. The video was titled, "Goodbye, Dad." It wasn't a funeral, it was a production. She stood before a coffin draped in white lilies, her voice cracking perfectly for the camera. "He always wanted me to be happy. This is how I'll honor him." Thousands watched. Donations poured in. People called her the bravest daughter alive. She ended the stream with a smile I'd only ever seen when she used to blow out birthday candles. But this time, she wasn't making a wish. She was cashing one. A month later, I walked back to our old home. Except it wasn't ours anymore. A "for sale" sign hung crooked on the lawn. Through the window, I saw strangers packing up boxes. They were laughing, drinking coffee, inside my living room. And across the street, a poster fluttered in the wind. Emily Hale and Ryan Carter, wedding this Sunday, printed in gold, paid for in blood. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, remembering the last time she hugged me, in that same room. I could still hear her whisper, "You'll always be part of my big day, Dad." Now I understood what she meant. That night I sat on the curb across from the house I built, the house she sold. I wasn't angry yet. Not really, I was hollow, like the casket she pretended to fill. Somewhere between betrayal and disbelief, I started laughing. It wasn't funny, it just wouldn't stop. She didn't bury me in the ground. She buried me in documents, in signatures and lies and smiling photos. She buried me in papers, not dirt. I died once by accident. The second time I planned it. That's how it begins. Not with rage, but with focus. When the world thinks you're dead, you learn two things fast. Nobody's looking for you, and that's the perfect time to start looking back. The next morning, I walked into St. Vincent's funeral home, the same one listed on my death certificate. The air smelled like lilies and bleach. The clerk behind the counter didn't even look up until I placed my ID in front of her. She glanced down, froze. You're supposed to be cremated. I smiled. Guess someone forgot to light the match. She went pale. Her hands trembled as she flipped through files, whispering like she was afraid the dead could hear. Then she slid a folder across the counter, teaching a thin, official final. Inside was my entire afterlife. Cremation form signed. Insurance transfer check completed. Executor Emily Hale. Witness Ryan Carter. Next to their signatures, a line in small type read, claim amount, $150,000. I stared at it, my reflection warping in the plastic sleeve. My daughter didn't just sell my name, she auctioned my ashes. I closed the folder, slid an envelope of cash across the counter. For your silence, I said, and for copies. The clerk nodded, too afraid to ask questions. Dead men make the best customers, we never complain. I rented a small room 2 miles from the wedding venue. Bare bulb, one window. A calendar with her wedding date circled in red. Every night I went through documents like a detective haunting his own case file. Bank transfers from the charity fund to her joint account with Ryan. A fake cremation receipt. A storage unit under Ryan's name where they'd kept my ashes. I traced every lie until I could smell the ink on her signature. But I wasn't going to the police. That would end the story too easily. She needed to see me, to look into the face she buried and realize death wasn't done with her yet. I began to build my return subby piece by piece. The first thing I bought was a suit, not a new one, mine. I found it in a second-hand shop, still tagged as funeral attire. Someone had donated it after the cremation. It smelled faintly of smoke and dust, like the memory of a fire that never happened. The shopkeeper folded it neatly, said, "Looks like it was made for you." I smiled. It was. That night I put it on. The fit was perfect, unsettlingly so. The mirror didn't show a man, it showed a revenant, a shadow in borrowed flesh. I spent the next few days recording everything, videos, documents, a confession in my own voice. If anything went wrong, the truth would still crawl its way into daylight. Every breath I took had purpose now, every movement a countdown. On the eve of the wedding, I walked to the venue grounds. It was already decorated. White tents, golden lights, and a banner that read, "Forever begins today." I stood behind the fence, watching the rehearsal, hidden under a street lamp's dying glow. She looked happy, not guilty, just radiant. And for a moment, just a moment, I almost let it go. Then I saw her hand brush Ryan's cheek. On her wrist was a gold bracelet engraved with my name. She wore it like a trophy. That was the moment something inside me went still. I went back to my rented room, sat in front of the mirror, and said aloud, "Revenge isn't loud. It walks in quietly, dressed like the dead." My reflection didn't blink. It didn't need to. The dead don't need rest. And tomorrow I was going to remind her that ghosts don't act. I didn't crash her wedding. I resurrected mine. That's how the story really ends, and how revenge truly begins. The Hale estate glowed like a cathedral made of money. White tents spread across the field, strings of golden lights draped from oak to oak, and a soft violin played something so perfect, it almost made me forget why I was there. Almost. Hundreds of guests laughed and drank champagne. TV crews adjusted their cameras. A banner above the stage shimmered in gold script, "Emily and Ryan, Forever begins today. Forever. They'd already stolen mine. I stood at the entrance, a man in a wrinkled black suit, the same one I was supposed to be buried in. On my chest, the old funeral tag still dangled, faded letters spelling John Whitaker. The security guard stepped forward. "Sir, guests only." I smiled, slow and quiet. "Don't worry, I'm not here to stay long." He hesitated, then I walked past him. Nobody stops the dead when they walk with purpose. Inside, the ceremony had just begun. Emily stood under an arch of white roses, glowing, flawless, untouchable. Her veil shimmered like glass dust under the sunlight. And when she opened her mouth, every word stabbed deeper than any blade. "Everything today," she said, voice trembling with fake sincerity, "was possible because of my father's love." Applause. Cameras. A tear ran down her cheek, perfectly timed for the photographers. Then, creak. The back doors opened, every head turned, the music stopped mid-note. The only sound left was my footsteps, slow, steady, each one heavier than the last. Emily froze. Ryan blinked, his jaw falling open. Someone whispered, "Is that—" Another voice, higher, terrified, screamed, "It's him!" Gasps spread like fire. Emily dropped her glass. It shattered against the marble floor, champagne bleeding across her dress. I didn't say a word at first. I just walked, past the tables, past the stunned guests, until I stood in front of the wedding cake, right beside her. I picked up a white envelope from the table, turned it over, and read aloud. "Emily Hale, donation for her father's memory fund." I held it up, smiling. "You spent my death well, didn't you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her skin turned white as the dress she wore. Ryan moved toward me, but I lifted a folder from my jacket, the same one from the funeral home. Receipts, insurance documents, forged signatures. Each page, a nail in her coffin. The crowd stared, frozen, horrified, recording everything. Even the news crew's red light blinked back on. I opened the folder, tossing the papers like cards. They fluttered in the air between us, landing around her feet. "You sold my body for your vows," I said, my voice low but cutting through the silence. "But I came to collect my soul." The room erupted. People whispered. Some filmed. Others backed away, unsure if this was real or performance. Emily stumbled, shaking her head. "You're dead. You're dead." I stepped closer. "Not yet, but you will be. In every story that follows." Ryan lunged, grabbing my arm, shouting for someone to call security. I turned, calm, deliberate, and swung the envelope of cash across his face. Bills burst into the air like confetti. Money fluttered around us, blood money. Some stuck to the spilled champagne, others landed on the wedding cake, soaking in sugar and guilt. The band had stopped playing, but the microphones stayed on. So when I spoke, the entire hall heard every word. "You built your perfect life on a corpse, Emily." I leaned in close enough for only her to hear the next line. "But corpses don't stay buried when they have unfinished business." Ryan tried to grab me again, but this time I didn't move. Instead, I looked up at the cameras, thousands watching live, and raised my hand. In it, I held the death certificate, the signature that started it all. I tore it in half, then in quarters. The sound was louder than thunder. Gasps, screams, chaos. Emily fell to her knees, shaking, mascara bleeding down her face. "Dad, please," she whispered, reaching out like she could pull me back into her lie. I took a step back, stared down at her. There was no rage left, no hatred, only silence. the kind that follows when truth finally hits the air. "Don't call me that," I said softly. "Fathers die for their children once. You made me do it twice." Ryan shouted something, unforgettable. I didn't listen. He swung at me, desperate, humiliated. The blow caught my shoulder. I barely felt it. I shoved him back. He slipped on the champagne and crashed into the cake. The crowd screamed. Phones rose higher, flash after flash. Everything was being filmed. Everything would be online within minutes. And that was the point. The world had mourned me once. Now it would watch her fall. I turned toward the exit, my hand brushing the funeral tag on my chest one last time. It felt lighter now, like I'd finally handed the weight back where it belonged. Before I stepped out, I looked over my shoulder and said, "They spent every dollar of my death." Then I paused, voice steady, unblinking. But I made sure they'd never afford peace. And with that, I walked out. Past the wreckage of cake and confetti, past the cameras, past the daughter who'd tried to sell a ghost. The video hit 10 million views before the first police car arrived. That's how fast justice travels when it smells like scandal. By morning, the world knew my name again. The dead father who came back for his money. It was on every channel, every phone, every whisper. Clips of me walking through the wedding doors, looped nonstop. My funeral tag swinging. My words echoing through microphones. "You sold my body for your vows, but I came to collect my soul." They called it the most haunting wedding in America. Comment sections turned into confessionals. If this was a movie, I'd think it's too cruel to be real. But it was real. Too real. Insurance investigators came first, then the reporters, then the police. Turns out the $150,000 life insurance payout was just the beginning. Ryan had forged signatures for an additional $80,000 in online donations. And Emily, she'd signed everyone. The story exploded. Headlines screamed, "Bride accused of faking father's death. Love, lies, and a funeral check." Ryan disappeared before sunrise. Abandoned his new bride before the honeymoon even started. Police said he drained their joint account and vanished across state lines. Emily didn't run. She didn't have to. The whole world found her anyway. When they finally brought me in for questioning, I said nothing. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't. They wanted interviews, cameras, statements. All I said, once quietly, was, "I didn't come for money. I came for truth." That line made it to every broadcast. People turned it into quotes, memes, even tattoos. But for me, it wasn't a slogan. It was survival. Because truth, unlike money, doesn't run out when you spend it. 3 weeks later, I was called in for the final hearing. Emily sat across the table, wrists cuffed, eyes hollow. She looked smaller. Not the woman who faked tears on live streams, but a broken reflection of the child who once drew hearts in motor oil. The room was quiet. Cameras off. Just the hum of fluorescent lights. She lifted her head, voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I did it for love." I didn't move. I didn't blink. Then I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You killed love the moment you priced it." The words hit harder than any verdict. Even the air seemed to stop. A single tear rolled down her cheek, and for the first time, she didn't wipe it away. When the officers led her out, she turned once, just once, and said, "You were supposed to be proud of me." I wanted to answer. But what could I say? Pride dies the same way love does. Quietly while you're looking the other way. Reporters waited outside. One shoved a mic toward me, asking, "Mr. Whitaker, how does it feel to finally get justice?" I thought about it. Then I looked past them toward the horizon where the sun was setting, and then Nunnis read heavy, tired. And I said almost to myself, justice isn't loud. It just arrives late, like me. That clip, just 15 seconds, became the most replayed moment of the year. But what the cameras didn't catch was what came after. Me standing alone on the courthouse steps, no crowd, no sound, just a man who had died twice, and realized that both times he lost something he could never buy back. Not peace, not love, not even hate, just silence. And maybe they called me the man who died twice. But truth is, I never really came back. That's how people remember me now. Not as a father, not as a husband, not even as a victim. Just a story that refuses to stay buried. A year has passed. I live in a small rented room behind an old diner. The kind of place where no one asks questions, and the walls hum with other people's secrets. They leave newspapers by my door sometimes. Front pages reprinted with my face, grainy screenshots from that wedding day. The man who rose from his own funeral. The father who haunted his daughter back into truth. I don't read them anymore. I don't own a TV or a phone. But every few weeks, someone recognizes me. The cook, the mailman, a stranger who whispers, "Hey, you're that guy, right? The one who died twice?" I nod. Then I change the subject because it's not dying twice that hurts. It's living once, knowing what died with you. Last week I got a letter. No return address, just a prison stamp and a handwriting I could never forget. Dad, I still dream of your footsteps walking into that hall. I wake up wishing it was all fake. I hate what I did. I hate that you made me see it. But what I hate most is that you were right. The words bled into the paper, or maybe that was just my eyes. I didn't answer. I just folded it, neat and slow, like something fragile that could still break. It sits on my desk now, beside two things I never threw away. My old funeral tag, yellowed, cracked, and one wedding envelope, still sealed, still full. Sometimes when the night is quiet enough, I can almost hear her voice again. Not the liar, not the bride. The little girl in the garage, covered in motor oil, saying, "Daddy, promise you'll never leave." And I whisper to no one,